All right, we'll call K-12 Subcommittee to order. Members, make sure that you are logged in, and we will have the clerk open up the board for our roll call. All right. All right, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Members, any personal orders before we are set to begin? All right, we'll go through a couple of updates on the calendar here. Item number 2, House Bill 746 is off notice. Item number 3, HCR 92 is off notice. Item number 5, House Bill 88 is off notice. Let's see here. Item number 9, House Bill 218, also off notice. Let's see. Item number 11, House Bill 90 is off notice. Is that the last one you had? All right. And I believe that's the last one I see for right now. All right. That brings us to the top of the calendar. Item number 1, House Bill 1162 by Representative Stevens. Properly motion. Representative Stevens, you are recognized on House Bill 1162, and I do believe you might have an amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's drafting code 6041.
All right, members, it does rewrite the bill, so without objection, we will vote to adopt amendment with drafting code 6041. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion and a second on that. Motion. Thank you, properly motion. And so we'll be voting to adopt amendment 6041. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized, Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the rare case that 2 districts overlap, we need to ensure that charter schools authorized by one LEA are not prohibited from operating within another one. For example, if a county authorizes a charter school, this legislation would allow them to locate anywhere within the county, including within the geographic boundaries of a municipal LEA located within that county. And this only applies to counties that have one municipal district.
All right, thank you for that. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Haston, and thank you for adding the amendment 6401. That did protect us in Shelby County, community of Germantown I represent. We did pass a bill a number of years ago that where we did have one LEA open up a charter in another municipal LEA. And so we passed a bill against that, but your amendment fixes that. So thank you very much.
All right, Representative Stevens, any, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm trying to make sure I understand the, I'll pick a LEA adjacent to mine, well, county. Oak Ridge City has a school system, and then it lies within Anderson County. So you saying that now, can Oak Ridge City operate a charter school and outside of its city boundary? Yeah, so could you explain that again for me? Because I'm looking confused with the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just the opposite of that. If the county approves a charter school, the charter can operate within the city that has its own special school district.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, I think we are set to vote on House Bill 1162. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your votes. Would any member like to change their votes? All right, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, with 8 ayes, the bill moves on to full education. All right. That brings us to item number 4, House Bill 698 by Representative Love. Properly motioned. Representative Love, you are recognized on House Bill 698, and I do believe you might have an amendment that rewrites the bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think that is Amendment 004410.
Okay, that's what we've got. Do I have a motion? Properly motion. Members, it does rewrite the bill, so without objection, we will vote to adopt Amendment 4410. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all are aware of the increasing need for child care facilities in our state. We know that many times one of the barriers to child care facilities opening and operating is a building. And so this particular piece of legislation simply says that if there is a child care facility in an area where an LEA has a child care service, the child care facility then has the first right of refusal to look at the leasing or the purchasing of a building. But if there's a charter school operating in that LEA, then the child care facility has the second right of refusal. And it just requires the LEA to provide a list of vacant or underutilized buildings to those persons who are interested in it.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions? Chairman Watt, you're recognized.
Thank you. And this information should be readily available. We passed a bill a number of years ago where charter schools asked for this same list of facilities that were either vacant and or low on attendance. So that list should be readily available. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, members, and I will just add that there is a similar bill that didn't come through this committee. There was Representative Williams had a bill that I think went through admin that's going to be in full. So if this does pass on out to full, there might need to be a little bit. There's just a couple of little differences that might be between these two bills that we need to make sure we look at as it gets into full after it gets out of here, if it gets out of here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm always a fan of safety net. Just in case one doesn't get someplace, we got another one to go forward.
All right, members, any other questions for our sponsor? All right, seeing none, we're set to vote on House Bill 698. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. Would any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 ayes, 1 no.
All right, with 6 ayes, the bill passes on to full education. All right, members, without objection, we are going to go in a little bit out of order here because we have a member that needed to be taken up for some other obligations here. So if you will, which two did he have? If you'll look at item number 24 on your calendar, if Representative Hale, make your way up there. House Bill 6 by Representative Hale. Do I have a motion? Properly motion. Representative Hale, you are recognized on House Bill 6.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. House Bill 6 would allow local school districts to enroll the pre-K program if there's extra seats available. What's happening is, and this was brought to me by a teacher, she was working in another county, but her child, because it was in pre-K, couldn't come with her. If it had been in kindergarten through 12, could have come with her. This is just saying if there's open seats after all of the federal guidelines have been met and there's still open seats left, then those students are able to come with their parents to be able. It just adds another toolbox to sometimes our school systems of hiring teachers from out of county. So that's basically what the bill does.
All right, thank you for that explanation, members. Any questions? Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've asked this question when as folks talk with me about it. Like the bill, so let me be clear about that. But the only concern is that if we have 5 extra vacancies at the end of the reporting period, they extend it to those 5 people that children that would not be eligible, and then somebody moves in and they're at capacity. So are there any provisions or safeguard to allow that student, that 4-year-old to get into the program?
Representative Hale.
Actually, Representative McKenzie, there's not. We were just saying that after the reporting period, I know in a couple of our counties, we still got open seats today, that would be, so that's not addressed.
Representative McKenzie?
Yeah, and I agree. I think this would be the one-off. So I don't think this is going to be widespread. I just wanted to know whether any safeguards built in. That may be something we consider in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Chairman Watt?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make sure we're clear. You may have said in the opening statement, we're talking about VPK, not pre-K.
Right.
If you're VPK, your statement is correct, but pre-K, by federal law, the SPAD students can be enrolled, but I think we're talking about VPK here.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 6. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your votes. Does any member wish to change their votes? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right. With 8 ayes, it moves on to full education. Brings us to item number 25 on the calendar, House Bill 9 by Representative Hale. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned, and I believe you do have an amendment, Representative Hale, on this one?
Yes, 3785.
All right,
Chairman.
and do I have a motion on the amendment? All right, properly motioned. I don't think it rewrites the bill. Do you want to quickly state what it does before we vote on this amendment?
That basically just changed from, we had previously said $25 or $50, and it changed it to $25 to align with the Education Freedom Act.
Okay, members, without objection, we'll go ahead and take a vote on adding this amendment to the bill with drafting code 3785. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You're recognized for an explanation on House Bill 9.
Thank you again, Chairman and Committee. This is a public school K-12 bill. Many of us, even some on this committee, serve very rural communities, and we struggle to kind of, I guess you would say, the gap between the haves and the have-nots. I tell folks all the time, we live in a county that, or in my district, we have 2 Walmarts and 1 new car dealership. So all of our sales tax dollars are going to other places. So what this would do is for LEAs that are 5,000 and less, it's a stair-step percentage to boost the TISA funding. And then also for the schools that were left out, that were kind of in between the fast-growing and then the at risk and distress, there's a mechanism in there for the $25 per student for the maintenance, just like we did for the other school districts that received through the Education Freedom. So with that, I renew my motion.
Thank you, Representative Hale. Representative McKenzie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one concerns me a little bit because, like you, I'm in the have and I'm in the have-not district, but mine happens to be deeply urban. It's the same issues. I always say that deeply urban child and that deeply rural child is basically the same kid.
Mm-hmm.
May have different skin colors, may have different issues, but their issues are a lot more alike than they are different. But in the whole TISA formulation, I think we had in-depth discussions on this, and well, while I, sympathize with you and empathize with you, at the end of the day, I think the solution is just putting more dollars in our school funding is a key. But to basically double the amount, I think it comes at a cost. Those funds come from somewhere to help, and so. I would say disproportionately leaning toward one weighting factor when some of the other ones are just as needy is problematic for me. Like I say, I definitely understand the need for more funding, and I think that's what this bill is asking for more funding for our public schools. But I don't know, when we've just implemented TISA and we hadn't really evaluated the cost, the true cost. Now we've layered on these vouchers. I just don't know where we're going to be, and they say fully fund hold harmless. It's this is a tough one in these times. So that's my concern. How would you respond to that?
Representative Hill?
Well, we all understand difficult times and the difficulties. I don't know what the true, Mr. McKenzie, the true fix-all is. But I see, I'll give you an example of what happened in one of my school districts. We had two principals to leave that were administrators as principals, went to a neighboring county. They were making 62 as administrators, or 67, I'm sorry. Now they're making 82 in a classroom teacher. They don't have the stresses. They don't have the headaches. They're working in a classroom. We can't compete with that. We don't have the sales tax base. We don't have the revenue base and stuff. So those are some of the struggles that we're facing. And so this is just something to try to help those. And then also the part that I put in there, there's many counties that were left out between the at-risk and distressed, and then those rapid growing that still have infrastructure needs, still have issues, so they're having, so that's why we included those in this as well.
Chairman Watt?
Thank you, Jim. And likewise, if I had the money, I understand exactly what you're asking for, and I would appropriate that. But we've had several bills before us this year, increasing the weighted measures on our TISA formula, and we've turned them all down because as Representative McKenzie said, we need to put more money into the TISA formula. But for us to change the weighted measures here and there and others, then we get all over the place. So good bill, but I just don't think we need to mess with our TISA formula right now. Thank you.
Representative Balsam? Go ahead and try it. I think that it might. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and test it out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Hill, Chairman White said some of the things that I was going to say as well, because this issue about school funding is a difficult one. Representative Reeves and I represent a district that I think receives less in TISA funding for our kids than any of the other 95 counties in the state. And our current system is really a product of the small schools decision from the Tennessee Supreme Court back in the early 90s. And this body responded to that decision with this thing called a fiscal capacity formula, which is one of the metrics that really hurts our county. And small schools was itself, in our view, a decision written by Chief Justice Lyle Reed that misapplied the equal protection clause in its analysis. So I think, like Chairman White, I'm going to have to vote against this, but I certainly understand and appreciate your passion in bringing it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Representative Hakeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hale, it's hard for me because I know you as an individual, as a person, you care about people, particularly children. But I'm finding that I have to concur with my colleagues on this when I look at a fiscal note of close to $80 million and knowing the needs throughout the state. But please know it's not personal or anything of that nature, but trying to, I guess, look at it, what I perceive as realistically. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, man. All right, thank you, members. No other questions? I think we are set to vote on House Bill 9. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your votes. Would any member like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 5 noes.
And with 5 noes, it does not pass on to full education. Thank you, Representative Hale. All right, members, that takes us back to, all right, I need to make a note. We did not mention this one earlier. Item number 6, House Bill 30, has also been taken off notice. All right, that brings us to item number 7, House Bill 1213 by Representative Johnson. Properly motioned. Representative Johnson, you are recognized on House Bill 1213.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. What this bill does is it allows accountability with our vouchers and our public tax dollars. This bill would require private schools who receive public funds from the voucher program to have their students take the same standardized test that public schools do. Taking a standardized test and not the same test, it does not allow you to compare those test scores. Unless they are the same test, statistically, it's not reliable to compare two different tests. So they would need to take the same test so that those public tax dollars that are now going to voucher schools, those folks know that that the kids that they're paying for are getting the education they need to get. Currently, all public school students are required to take the TCAP or the TN Ready test, as well as the ACT and other standardized tests throughout the years. This bill is simply putting those same requirements on all schools that are funded by taxpayer dollars, which include some private schools. Requiring these standardized tests for students doesn't only give us the information we need to determine where our students are academically throughout the state, but also allows teachers to see where their students are achieving or not achieving, and that they spend ample time on the necessary subjects. Without all students receiving public funds to attend school completing these assessments, we will not have a comprehensive idea of how our students are performing and how students in these private schools that don't have any of the same transparency are doing compared to the rest of the kids in the state. Why are we only interested in data from traditional public schools and charter schools, but not from students in private schools whose tuition is being paid for by public tax dollars? This will increase transparency in our voucher program by allowing taxpayers who are now funding these private schools to see how their money is being spent. Thank you. I move.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Representative Akeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Johnson, I maybe should asking the attorney instead of you, but I'm going to start with you. I saw a figure of $33,000 for this change. Was that for one school, or is that for the entire?
Should be the entire state.
Okay. All right. And I think if there's anything different from that, I'll probably hear from the attorney. All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Not a
Chairman.
All right,
lawyer.
Representative Johnson. I believe that. Any other thing? I don't think Katie wanted to chime in on that. But maybe more of a fiscal review question. Any other questions? Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so thank you for bringing the bill. Does this include, we hear a lot, and these are good things, these ACT career readiness assessments, that's more geared toward that child, that even though they're in private school, they're not, bound to be a doctor or a lawyer. They're more on a career path. So would that include those type tests as well?
Hold on one second. Representative Johnson.
It should include any of the tests that the other students are taking. I'm more concerned as far as, this body over the years has made it critical that students are tested yearly with a TCAP type test. So I think that is the most important when it comes to comparing student and knowing how those students are doing. But certainly the students in those other schools that are being publicly funded should have access to ASVAB and ACT and all those other things.
All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, I believe we are set to vote on House Bill 1213. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for the vote. Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 6 noes.
With 6 noes, the bill does fail to pass. That brings us to item number 8, House Bill 1214 by Representative Johnson. Properly motion. Representative Johnson, you are recognized on House Bill 1214, and I don't believe you have any amendments, so you are recognized.
Thank you. Yes, this bill is similar. It just adds on a little more. It requires that the testing be the same with our voucher schools, our private schools that are receiving public tax dollars, but it also adds on putting their syllabi or their standards on the website, putting their books and materials on the website as we require public schools to do. Serves multiple purposes. If for one, it helps families who might be looking for a school be able to just go to that website, see what they're offering, and not have to do a bunch of school visits and things like that unless there's something there that they're interested in. But also, this body again decided that this is important for our public schools, which are publicly funded. Now that some private schools are publicly funded, they should be held to those same standards. So this would require private schools who receive public funds from the voucher program to make their curriculum and educational materials public, as public schools currently have to do, and have their students take the same standardized test. Currently, all public schools curriculum is required to be public, as well as all educational materials used in classrooms and school libraries. This is required to post a list of textbooks and instructional materials to the Department of Education's website. Each school is required to compile a list of all the materials in the school library and the classroom libraries and post them on the school's website. We know that the curriculum is also would need to be made public because private schools are allowed to have their own curriculum and determine their own standards and everything, but those should be posted on the website as they are publicly funded. All public schools in the state are also, well, we've gone over the test, I'll skip that, but again, taking the same test. If we're funding private schools, we need to hold them to the same standard we hold our public schools to. The bill does not create a standard for curriculum taught in private schools, nor does it dictate what materials are allowed in private schools. It only states that private schools receiving public funds need to perform the same requirements that our public schools currently have. This will increase transparency in our voucher program by allowing taxpayers who are now funding these private schools to see how their money is truly being spent.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions? Representative McKenzie, you were recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you know, this bill kind of gets to the core of what we need to be evaluating and looking at. I mean, that way our parents, the General Assembly, the governor, whoever, we can make data-driven decisions if we have the data. And that's critical. There's although I wasn't here when they voted for the first voucher program, at least we get the same test. You can do an apples to apples comparison and make decisions based on that. You can draw conclusions based on that, and that's what this bill does. So this to me is it's going to be the only way for us to make a true decision on what we're doing in terms of how we're funding our schools and our children, since we've opened up the pot there. And so my question, I guess, would be, what's the downside of this piece of legislation is one. And then do you think, because another part of your bill talks about getting information from the libraries and the things that they're keeping, do you think, absent of this, are we going to end up with those private schools getting Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests once they start taking these public dollars? Is that going to become an issue and become something that litigators end up spending a lot of our additional monies on, or is this something that we should do proactively?
Representative Johnson.
Thank you. There's no downside to this bill. I mean, it's just doing some of the things we insisted our current public schools do because we thought it was a good idea. And folks up here are saying that these things are working that we put into place. And so just making sure that any publicly funded school does those things is important. We know that, and even as far as helping families who might want to use a voucher, have an easier way of looking at where they might want to send their student. But more importantly for me is making sure that there is some transparency in how the schools are operating and what we are funding. And so it is critical that we do that. And sure, there will be questions and there's going to be some growing pains when you are publicly funding private schools. Private schools, many of them had some concerns about changes that would be made if they took vouchers. Some didn't want to go that route, but some did. But the reality is, when you're taking public dollars, you need to be accountable to the public. And if we disagree with that and don't pass this bill, we're saying it doesn't matter. Well, then it doesn't matter in public schools. Because if it doesn't matter in these schools that are funded by the folks in this room, then it doesn't matter about the other schools either. So it's either one or the other because it's about public funding.
Representative Akeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might need to go out of, what is it? Session. I have a question for the attorney, if I may.
All right, members, without objection, we will go out of session and recognize legal.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney, the guidelines or stipulations in regards to private schools and public schools, is there a benefit to being able to make a comparison like that? Or are the standards that private schools have, do we consider that sufficient?
Katie Robertson, Legal Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. I believe that would be more of a question for the sponsor as to the benefits or downsides of implementing this bill. It's not so much of a legal question.
All right.
Accept that. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Chair.
All right, without objection, we will go back into session. And Representative Bolso, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Johnson, for being here and for bringing this proposed legislation. Respectfully, I'm going to be voting against it because one thing that I thought was interesting is that nothing in the bill or in the presentation or in the questioning thus far has mentioned the word parent. And part of what we did with the Education Freedom Act was to give parents more choice, to give parents more freedom as to where their children should be educated. And the biggest data point for me has always been, are parents happy with the education their students are getting? Because parents love the child more than anyone else on the planet. And what we know from the governor's initial education savings account program was that parents were 99% satisfied with the education that their kids were getting in the schools that the parents had selected. So because our work earlier in the special session gave parents more choice and gave parents freedom, I'm going to be respectfully voting against this because I trust the parents, frankly, more than any data that could be generated by these various tests. Thank you.
Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
And thank you. It's unfortunate that parents are so happy with poor performance because what we saw was lower performance by those students with vouchers. But I did mention the parents. I mentioned them very early on, specifically that putting this on the website will help parents when they want to use a voucher because they'll be able to see, what curriculum they're teaching, what materials they're using. And so because every private school can be different in that respect, this would allow them not to have to go to every school and sit down, but they could view that on the website. Maybe it gives them a better idea of what school they would prefer their child to be going to. So parents were absolutely mentioned in this, and parents of kids in traditional public schools want to know how their dollars are being spent. And so the reality is that public tax dollars should go to schools that are performing better. If a school is performing worse, I'm sorry that parents are okay with lesser performance. But the reality is if it's public tax dollars, that's fine if they want to pay for lesser performance. But public tax dollars should go to the schools that are performing better, which at this point we know are our public schools.
Thank you for that. And I did have one other person on the list. I did want to just add, and it makes this debate and this discussion very interesting, is because there's some very valid points on both sides. And you make a great point that it's public tax dollars that should stay with public schools. And that's got a lot of weight to it. But the other side of that argument that has a lot of weight, and I'm not saying one is more dominant than the other, I think they're equally dominant, is that it's also private citizen tax dollars, and those are parents, and Tennessee parents are paying tax dollars. And I think that they have some rights too, to be able to dictate where those educational dollars go. Not saying that one argument is as far as supersedes the other, but I think it's just a fair point to have on both sides of the scales there. And Representative Johnson, then I'll go to Representative Akeem.
Okay. We all pay those taxes. We don't pay our taxes so that our kids can go to public schools. We pay our taxes so that we have great public schools, so that they lift our community, so that our home properties, our house values stay high, so that we have an educated workforce in our community meeting the needs, so that we have less vandalism and crime in our communities because we have a well-educated community. And so if that were the case, someone like me who doesn't have children, I guess I should get a $7,000 a month check for the kids that I don't have in public schools. But I want to pay my taxes so my schools are good, because that's better for my community. Your public dollars that you pay for taxes are not for your kids to go to school. It's for the betterment of the community.
President Akeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if we're missing the point here. Well, I guess from my perspective, if you don't have comparative guidelines, how do you know that both are doing the job we want to be done? And then we talk about overriding in a type of comparison, because some parents want to go to a private school. The logic doesn't sit with me that you can't compare. We talk about sometimes here unintended consequences. Well, how do you know if there's unintended consequences if you're not looking at the statistics as to how well children are doing in school? So I would hope it is relevant to talk about parent choice, but we're talking about public dollars. If you're going to ask it of public schools and you're going to get public dollars, I think you ought to have some guidelines also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Watt. Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Rep. Hakeem, because that is the way that many of us see it, is how, if you're not publicly aware of how these schools are doing and are they performing, we know the families might be happy, but is the performance where it needs to be for the dollars that our public folks are spending to pay there? And it defies logic to require it in one setting and not require it in the public schools receiving the same public tax dollars. It defies logic not to put those same requirements.
Chairman Watt.
Thank you, Chairman Hayes. Yeah, I think Representative Johnson, she does make a lot of good points, and these points, I think the main thing that I would like to say, we spent many hours in January on the EFS bill, and also years before when we passed the ESA bill, talking this very thing. And what we eventually passed out was what we now have in the ESA and the EFS programs. So I think to go back now and to change the direction when we did put so many hours in what came out on the House floor and the Senate floor was not this. So that would be the only reason I would say I wouldn't want to go down that road right now with this.
Representative Johnson.
Well, I hear a lot up here how we tweak bills as we continue on and as things, pan out. But I think one thing I am hearing overwhelmingly from my constituents is, where's the accountability with these schools? How do we know how our public tax dollars are being spent? And again, it defies logic to pretend like our traditional public schools are responsible to do these things because they get public tax dollars. And now we're giving public tax dollars to private schools. and they're required to do 0 of those same things.
Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, our system of higher education has been the envy of the world for centuries, actually. In fact, private higher education predates the Declaration of Independence, predates the Constitution. And we have a system of both private and public education in higher education. We have a system of K-12 private and public education that goes on for centuries as well. You mentioned the public benefit of public schools, and I would agree with you. There's a great public benefit when it comes to public schools, but we can't overlook the public benefit of private schools either, both at in higher education, but in K-12 education as well. There is a public benefit for private schools. Students who graduate from private schools go on to serve in the communities that you spoke of, just like students do in public schools as well. So I don't think that we should miss that private education provides a public benefit. And as already been stated, these are taxpayer dollars that are following students to those private schools. The other thing that I would mention, another point, and you are correct that comparing one test to another is not possible, but certainly we're smart enough in Tennessee to be able to look at testing results. And one of the things that we did when it came to the EFA is that we said that those schools had to be either category 1, 2, or 3 schools. They could not be category 4 schools. So what's the difference? The difference is that those categories of schools are accredited by regional accrediting bodies. So those requirements, that transparency that you spoke of, and I've served on accreditation teams at the K-12 level, that transparency is great. In fact, it takes a much deeper dive than we do when it comes to what we do as a legislature when it comes to our public institution. It looks at testing results, it looks at finances, it looks at teacher qualification, looks at all those things. So I think that we were very wise when it came to passing the EFA to say, okay, those schools that are going to accept students and accept the scholarship, it's not a voucher, it's a scholarship. Those that are going to accept the scholarship are going to have to be those that fit in a category where they're accredited, where there is great transparency and great accountability. And so I think that there was great wisdom in what we passed earlier this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Johnson.
So can you explain to me why the students with vouchers perform worse? And when you make the comparison.
Well, I will say that's about the 3rd time that that's been referenced. And I don't think we've had anything sent to our committee as far as any kind of documents to state that. It could be factual.
It's on the state website.
Well, we would need to have that, make sure that that gets to committee before it's used several times in committee, but go ahead.
It's been reported on multiple times using data from the state website. But
what is the exact data?
It's there are multiple schools. I don't know the data for all the schools, but I do know that that every voucher student was performing more poorly than public school peers. But back to university. I didn't say private schools aren't a value. Private schools can be a value, some better than others, of course. But the comparison, it's intellectually dishonest to compare university and college to K-12 because K-12, every single child is required to go. With university, it's a choice of whether or not you want to attend. But when we are requiring every kiddo in Tennessee to attend school and we are using public tax dollars to pay for them, we need to make sure that those folks are doing their job. And again, why are you letting private schools out of something you are requiring of public schools who are accredited? You're talking about accreditation. Okay, well, our public schools have accreditation, but you want to put grades on them. You want to grade them A through F. You want to put all of these requirements on them, but yet you're saying whatever accreditation these private schools have is just fine and they don't need any more. Doesn't make sense to me. The logic is not functioning here.
Representative Slater?
Just one quick follow-up. You really make the argument for why it's even more important for us to provide choice for parents when it comes to K-12 education, because we do have compulsory education laws. So that's even, it's more incumbent upon the legislature then to allow parents to choose the school which best suits the needs of their child. We have compulsory education. Why should we force then parents to send their children to a particular school because of a zip code? We should be providing more choice. I'm glad to hear that you are in favor of choice. I guess that perhaps it's just your choice is in a different area than mine. Mine has to do with providing for parents who have K-12 students the ability to choose where their children attend school.
All right. Representative Johnson?
Yes, thank you. I do support choice, but what I want to make clear is we have choice in Knox County. We could go to a school outside of our zip code. We have STEM academies, career prep. If we are fully investing in our public schools, we can offer those choices within our public schools. Sadly, we're in the bottom 5 of funding in this state, our schools. And so when you're doing that, when you're strangling, especially our rural communities, in what they can offer to our kiddos, then you are restricting choice. And then you're telling them to go to a private school, which just probably don't have one in their rural county. So, and then you're not going to provide transportation. So if they want to go out of county, their parents are going to have to be able to take them. This is not a real choice for kids. Let's fully fund our public schools and offer those choices within those schools so that we don't have to drain money away to private entities that you guys seem unwilling to make a little more transparent for the people who want to go there or the people who are funding them.
Representative Mayberry? Question has been called. Members, we are set to vote on House Bill 1214. Madam Clerk, please open up the board. Members, please cast your vote. Would any member like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 yes, 6 no's.
All right, with 6 no's, bill fails to pass. And that brings us to item number 10 on the calendar. Properly motion, that is House Bill, what number? 1109 by Representative Salinas. It has been properly motioned and I see no amendments. So Representative Salinas, you are recognized on House Bill 1109.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. What my bill does is requires private schools who are eligible to take vouchers to run background checks on anyone holding positions that require proximity to students at the schools. So this is not only for the teachers, but also for any other faculty member, administrator, anyone that has access to the students. And what is required is looking through the registry of sex offenders, health abuse registry, as well as looking to see if the license of the educator has been previously suspended. And this is I brought this bill in an effort to make sure that our kids are safe regardless where them or their parents decide to go to school. So with that.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions for our sponsor? Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is pretty timely piece of legislation here in terms of, the issues going on over in East Tennessee with respect to, folks not giving background check. This wasn't for a private school, so I don't want to make that clear. But are you saying that there's no statewide mandate that anybody teaching us children, public or private, that a background check is required for them to interact with our children?
Representative Salinas, you're recognized.
There is no current law that requires that. That doesn't mean that there aren't private schools that are doing it out of their own need to keep their students safe and to provide that information to parents. But there is no current law that requires every single private school or public school, as our public schools are already doing it, that requires them to run background checks on people that have access to kids.
All right, members. Representative McKenzie.
Just
follow-up? Sure.
one quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm assuming, and it says here that, you know, with this, there's no real cost to the taxpayer, because like when, you know, I officiate in sports, and every year we have to get a background check just to interact for that 1 hour or 2 hours with the children. But I pay for that background check. So that's when I'm assuming that the applicant, or if the school has a fund pot of money, that process will not be incurred by the taxpayers. That's by the individual or the school.
Representative Salinas.
The way the bill is written, the cost would be paid by the school. So no,
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your thought there.
it would be paid by the school, and there would be no cost to the state or the taxpayers.
All right, thank you. And members, we did have a little bit of insight about what the state board already mandates. So I'll go out of session and let legal talk to that. So without objection, we'll go out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. Currently, in State Board of Education rules, it requires for their approval process to be considered a Category 1 through 5 school that criminal history record checks are conducted prior to employment for any person applying for or holding a position as a teacher or any other position requiring proximity to school children.
All right, members, without objection, we will go back into session. Just want to make sure that we had what was currently in place on the record there. All right, members, without any other questions for our sponsor, Representative Hakeem.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if I need to ask the attorney while we were out of session, but is this, when we say public schools, or does that also means that if public dollars are going to a school, that it would also have the same guidelines or requirements?
All right, without objection, members, we will go back out of session.
Could
Katie
you?
Robertson. Go ahead, Representative Hakeem, please state that one more time for legal.
Any school that receive public dollars, would they have the same requirements as far as background checks and other things of that nature that what we consider a public school would?
To be considered a Category 1 through 5 school, regardless of whether you're receiving state funds, you're required to conduct criminal history background checks. And the language in State Board of Education rules regarding the criminal history background checks is the same as public schools.
All right, thank you. Representative Hakeem for legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Presently, with our schools, who pays for that? The background checks and so forth.
Are you talking about the private schools?
Now, if you receive public dollars in a school, considered private or public, who pays for those background checks?
There's no language in the bill that's being considered or the State Board of Education's current rules as to who pays for the background checks.
All right, Representative Hakeem.
Presently, okay, I'll say, okay, you said there's no guidelines. So who's paying for it? You know, I'm not hearing clearly who's paying for it. If it's not the school system, you know, who's paying for it?
I think that we have a member that has some insight on the way that this procedure works. So without objection, we will go back into session, and I will go to Representative Slater.
Thank you, Chairman. And Representative Akeem, in answer to that question, private schools, they pay for the background checks. As was stated by legal, we already are doing this in the state. I referenced earlier category 1, 2, and 3 schools. As you heard from legal, this goes beyond to category 4 and category 5 schools as well. Even those schools that are not accredited still provide background checks, and that is covered by the private schools themselves. Whether or not they're a part of the IEA program or the current ESA program, and I suspect as the rules are promulgated for the FS, the new scholarship, that will be the same as well. So private schools pay for that. I would say to the sponsor that I appreciate the sentiment of this because you are correct. Anyone who is working with children has access to children, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a maintenance worker, cafeteria worker, bus driver. I agree 100% with you that they need to be there. They need to have routine and regular fingerprinting, screening, and background checks. And fortunately, in Tennessee, we do have in place those provisions for all students in any school, whether they're public or private. As was referenced earlier, there are some unfortunate situations, and one that was recent in a public school over in East Tennessee, and that's certainly unfortunate that would take place. But that's not the fault of the legislature. That's the fault of those who did not follow the law. So I appreciate your sentiment. I'm going to be voting against this because it's actually unnecessary legislation because this is already in place. But thank you so much for the sentiment because you're exactly right. We need to make sure that folks that have access to children, that they go through thorough background checks.
Thank you, Representative Salinas. You're recognized.
Yeah, a rule is not a law. So if we want to say that we value the safety of kids, we should put that in our laws.
Thank you for that. The rules in this case, though, do apply the same force as law in as far as our schools are concerned. Any other questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, we'll be opening up the board for, Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting on House Bill 1109. Members, please cast your votes. Would any member wish to change their votes? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 6 noes.
All right, and with 6 noes, the bill does fail to pass. I will be moving the gavel down to Chairman Watt for a few bills.
Thank you, Chairman Haston. And members, we're on item number 11, HB 90, which is, I believe, was taken off notice. Taken off notice. So HB 0090 has been already declared off notice. That brings us to item number 12, House Bill 91. You got a motion and a second. Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you. And the amendment that rewrites the bill has drafting code 5309.
So the amendment does rewrite the bill. Any objection to adding the amendment to the bill? I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
You got a motion second on the amendment. So any objection to the question? Adding the amendment, what was the amendment number?
5309.
Of adding 5309 onto House Bill 91. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Your bill is properly amended. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill reduces unnecessary testing that is not connected to student scholarships or college requirements. It adds much needed focus on ACT preparation success, which are tied to scholarships and colleges, keeps accountability in place, but bases it on an exam that directly connects students to college opportunities. It reduces the TCAP EOCs in the high school and would allow for us to then have pre-ACT in 9th, pre-ACT in 10th, and ACT in 11th, and it does not remove the retake in 12th. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Members, with that explanation of the bill, we'll open it up for discussion to Chairman Haston. Representative Hakeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for, I guess, point of clarity, the end of course tests, are those being eliminated?
Chairman Haston?
The math and English would be replaced by the ACT. We would be keeping the science EOC, since the science EOC, the science portion of the ACT will not be available in the coming years.
It won't be
You're recognized, sir.
okay, when we won't be available, it's being phased out, or what are we saying?
Chairman?
Yes, and the science portion of the ACT, yes, but the math and English is remaining the same.
Chairman, Representative Hakeem?
Oh, I guess, are we, what is it about the science piece of this evaluation that we feel is not necessary?
Chairman Haston?
No, we're keeping the science EOC in place. The part that's being eliminated, the ACT is not going to be offering the science portion on the ACT. So this bill just focuses the math and English accountability on what's off of the ACT, but the science will stay the same as it has been off of the EOC that's currently given at the high school level.
Thank you. Members, someone else? Anyone? Representative Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman, can you tell me a little bit about, is this permissive for an LEA to choose a different test, or does it require the ACT?
Chairman Haston?
This would require that the ACT is already required, but this would just require that the accountability be tied to ACT. Right now, I had this one quote that came from a director that is not in my district, but I thought it was perfect for what we're talking about. With ACT being a major focus for every graduate, being split between EOCs and ACT can cause issues. EOC focus makes ACT prep that is needed tough, and many times a tug of war takes place between the EOC and ACT. And we're all for accountability and we're all for data, but we need to tie it to the data that matters and tie it to an exam that connects students directly to scholarships and directly to post-secondary opportunities. Governor Haslam had a quote 10 years ago, you can look this up on YouTube, where the state of Tennessee's ACT score went up 0.3 points. And he said, up 0.3 points on our ACT scores is a huge number on a statewide basis, and it's significant. It's really critical everyone realizes our current approach needs a continued commitment. Well, since 2018, we've gone down 1.4 points. So if that fact remains that was a huge significant jump, then dropping 1.4 points is something that should state that we should do something different and that we're failing our students on the focus that we have it on right now.
Representative Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my oldest is actually taking the ACT today, so I can appreciate all that goes into studying for that and doing other things too. Last thing. The Department of Education may go away. Does this language accommodate for that?
Chairman Haston?
Yes, I don't think that anything that happens at the federal level will have anything that will dictate what we can do here with this today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Boso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Haston, for bringing this. I've got a question about expectations. If we, in fact, remove these end-of-course assessments from school, how is that likely to affect the actual instruction in the classroom and what students are actually being taught in the classroom by teachers?
You recognize?
It really wouldn't change anything as far as what they're being taught. It would remove 13 hours of testing time away from their schedule. It would be one bonus. So it would just increase the ability to have more time to teach our standards. Also, before if this does get to full committee, I do have some data I can send out, some crosswalks that shows how the ACT does align well with Tennessee standards, which is something that gets said that it doesn't a lot of times. And so that'll be something that you all can research on those crosswalks yourself. But I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Representative Kinsey, you have a comment?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill, because what this bill will do, it get to our last kind of conversation, at least in this particular time, we'll get a direct comparison with the ACT test, because it's the same for private schools, same for public schools. So this makes sense, and hopefully this will be part of the path that gets us to being able to make these direct comparisons. So thank you for bringing the bill.
Chairman Hastings.
Thank you. And I'll just say my one last follow-up is that what we would be doing here is not reinventing the wheel at all. If you will look up, and this will be part of some information I'll send out to you all before full. If you look at the U.S. News World Report rankings of the states with the best public high schools in America, and they have a very good formula that they use to determine that based on career readiness and assessments and serving underprivileged children. State of Tennessee ranks 33rd right now. And 7 of the top 12 states with the best public high schools do not have additional state mandated tests. Or 7 of the top 12 do not have state demanded and focus solely on SAT or ACT. And 5 of the bottom 8 states in this ranking do have additional state mandated tests. So there is definitely a pathway for this to work and to be successful. And I think that we've tried the way that we're currently under. And I think that our declining ACT scores show that it has not been working. With that, I renew my motion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chairman Hastings. And I know Chairman Hastings and I, we've had this conversation many times, so he kind of knows where, so before he takes the gavel back from me. Here's my concern. I want us to really flush out, and this is where I haven't been able to get past, specifically on this particular bill or other bills like it. End of course, this would remove, like as the chairman said, math, English, and U.S. history end of course. The end of course is really a final exam. Now, if you go back before 2007 in our state, when we did not have college and career ready standards, and basically when I used to teach school, I would teach science, and then I would create my own test based upon the curriculum that I was teaching, and then test the students where they passed or failed that. So the end of course test, in my opinion, and I stand to be corrected, is a final exam for the information that you learn during that semester or that year's course. And so removing the final exam, which is, by the way, based upon Tennessee higher standards, which we didn't have before 2007. And that's when we've talked about this many times, the NAEP scores, NAEP was showing us when we took the national NAEP test that we were around 34% proficient. We were showing 96% proficient before that time. Well, we adopted college and career ready. I don't know if y'all remember the Common Core debacle that we went through during those years. Well, Governor Haslam, for a year, set up for us a committee across the state, and then we adopted Tennessee higher standards, college and career. And once we started giving the end of course in these subjects, lo and behold, we matched up with NAEP. We were 34% proficient, so with truth in advertising for the first time. So my concern, if you remove the end of course test or the final exam, there's really no other way we know that the student is achieving that information. The ACT is a great test, but it's not based upon Tennessee standards. So if we quit testing based upon Tennessee standards, what does that mean? So that I'm concerned about. I'm all for the ACT, but I'm a little concerned if that is our only test and we remove the final exam, basically, of make sure, and we do a lot of accountability on that, accountability on teachers and accountability on TVOS and a lot of things on how well the students are doing at the end of each semester or year. So that is my concern about going fully ACT and removing the end of course. Chairman Hastings.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've had a lot of good debate over this, you and I, in over the years. And And I do think, like you'll see, I don't think that it's quite accurate on the saying that ACT, there's a lot of similarities when you see the crosswalk. ACT hits a lot of the marks, most of the marks on the Tennessee standards. And right now, you know, NAEP scores have looked better for us, but the NAEP scores are only taken by 3% of students, and the NAEP does not align with Tennessee standards at all. I mean, it's way far off from what the ACT even does. And the NAEP isn't connected to any scholarship money, and it's not connected to any post-secondary opportunity. And you can still get final exams, and using the pre-ACT in 9th and 10th grade and the ACT in 10th grade, I think we can still hit all the accountability measures that we currently can. And I'll just say this, don't take my word for this. You know, members, you know, that are voting and full committee coming up, you go ask your counselors and you go ask your principals and you ask them and you present this bill to them and you just take their advice and do what they say on this. Don't take my advice. And they're the ones that brought me this bill. And so if your group says, no, we love the EOCs, it's the best thing we have, then vote against it. If they say this is a better pathway forward, we're seeing a decline in our ACT scores, we would like to have more focus to get them prepared for that test, then I would ask for you to take their advice and vote for it.
Thank you, Chairman Haston. Members, Representative Mayberry.
Chairman Asen, I just want to thank you for this legislation. As a school board member, speaking to a lot of teachers, students know that these tests don't count towards their grades, and teachers' evaluations are heavily weighed on these tests. And it's kind of an unfair scenario to put them in as they're being evaluated based on these tests. ACT does affect their future, and I believe that this will help their overall education as we align the standards to the ACT. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else would like to weigh in on House Bill 91? Seeing none. Any objection to the question being called? Hearing none. Will the clerk please call the roll on House Bill 91? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 3 noes.
Thank you very much. House Bill 91 does move out to a full committee. Thank you, committee. Let's now look at item number 13 by Chairman Haston, House Bill 138. You got a motion and a second. Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you. And this does have an amendment that does not rewrite the bill. I'll be glad to explain.
Got a motion? There is an amendment? Okay. What is the amendment number, sir?
It basically it just changes it to the funds being non-recurring funds.
And the amendment number?
6196.
Members, we're on amendment 6196. Doesn't rewrite the bill, but with that, one second. Yeah, we got 5. Okay. Member on amendment 6196, and Chairman Haston will explain that amendment. It does not rewrite the bill. Would you give us
It just makes it to where it's not, it goes to the funding being non-recurring funds.
Okay, members, any objection to adding amendment 6196 onto House Bill 138? Please think of saying any objection. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Your bill is amended properly. You're recognized on House Bill 138.
Thank you, members. This bill just simply establishes a CTE grant fund that public schools can use to purchase high-quality CTE curriculum. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
With that explanation, members, any questions on House Bill 138? Seeing none, any objections to the question being called? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 1 no.
House Bill 138 does move out to full committee. That brings us to item number, and for those in the audience, we have a lot of members having to carry bills in other committees. That's why we lost a few members. Hopefully they'll be back shortly. Item number 14, House Bill 1001 by Chairman Haston. You're recognized. You got a motion, you get a second.
All right.
I give you a second. Go
Thank-
ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe I do have an amendment that rewrites the bill. It's drafting code 4778.
Okay, Amendment 4778, amendment does rewrite the bill. Got a motion on the amendment. You got a second on the amendment. So any objection to adding the amendment since it does rewrite the bill for proper discussion? Hearing no objection, all those in favor of adding the amendment to the bill, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. It is now your bill is properly amended.
All right, thank you, members. This will sound familiar because it's the exact same part that we added to Representative Leader Cochran's bill last week. It's a permissive bill that gives career technical education students and their high schools flexibility in substituting a CTE course for Algebra 2, foreign language, and chemistry, and still meet high school graduation requirements.
Explanation before us. Chairman Hayes, let me ask one question. A number of years ago in April 2022, we did pass the Industry 4.0 credential. What does that do to this, to that?
It wouldn't really affect that at all. This just makes it to where a student can meet the high school graduation requirements, but it wouldn't hurt that particular graduation path.
Okay, members, let's have any discussion on House Bill 1001. Seeing no further discussion, any objection to the question being called? Hearing none. Would the clerk please call the vote? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay, bill fails for lack of a majority. House Bill 1001 fails for lack of majority. Okay, Chairman Haston, you had item number 15, House Bill 1003. You are recognized, Chairman. Got a
All right.
motion to second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1003. This bill keeps the State Board of Education from having to require that a private school who provides a fully online self-paced educational program to comply with certain class size, school calendar, vaccination, and assessment requirements in order to be approved to operate in the state. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any amendments, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, amendment with, is it 4771? Yeah, and that does rewrite the bill and explain and meets the explanation I just made.
Okay, Amendment 4771, we have a motion on the amendment. We have a second. You got a second. So any objection to adding the amendment to the bill since it does rewrite it? Hearing no objection, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Your bill is amended properly. And you just gave the explanation. Could you do it just one more time for us?
Sure. This bill keeps the State Board of Education from having to require that a private school provides a fully online self-paced educational program to comply with certain class size, school calendar, vaccination, and assessment requirements in order to be approved to operate in the state. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Members of that explanation, I did have one question. How does this affect the EFS bill we just passed, where if you're a category 1, 2, or 3 school, we have certain restrictions on the category 3 schools? You recognize?
Thank you. I don't think that it affects that. I will say that the problem that this is trying to get at is this. Recent regulatory changes that impose some things on category 3 schools that created issues with compliance, which put them at risk at their ability to offer online options for students. And so that's the problem that this bill was trying to get at.
Okay, members, questions on House Bill 1003. Representative McKenzie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only problem with this bill is that there's another one coming through that's going to start allowing these virtual students to compete in extracurricular activity, sports, and things of that nature. That's my concern with this one, is that we're opening up. I'm all for, if you want to educate your child at home or have them, or that's more conducive for them. But, if they don't have a tuberculosis, vaccine, or something of that nature, they're going to be interacting with other children in a really deeply physical way. If they're wrestling team, basketball team. So that's my concern, is that I would say your unintended consequences. I think you have a clean bill, but some of these other things that are moving is going to really put us in a difficult situation, I think.
Thank you, Chairman Haston. Follow up.
Yeah, I think is it House Bill 355 that might be the one powers that, yeah, that's one we're trying to see if we can get these to kind of align. Oh, I'm being told that that's just public. That's just public virtual schools. That is what 355 is dealing with, is what legal is just informing.
Representative McKenzie.
I'm probably going to have to, I'm going to have to go out, ask to go out of session, because I'd like to hear more about that. So thank you for chiming in.
Without objection, we're out of session. Recognize legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. I believe the bill that you're referencing is House Bill 355 by Representative Powers. That is requiring of allowing students who participate in a public virtual school operated by an LEA to participate in sports or interscholastic athletics that are provided by an LEA.
Right, you recognize Reverend McKenzie.
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation. So you're saying that these students that this bill will affect will not be able to participate in interscholastic activities and extracurricular type activities.
Legal, you recognize?
House Bill 1003 is for purposes of being operating as a Category 3 non-public school. So the two bills are separate from one another.
You follow up, Representative McKenzie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still trying to figure. Yeah, I understand that they're separate bills, but will there be crosstalk? Will, as a result of passing this bill, will students be able to participate in any way, shape, form, or fashion as a result of 355 in activities?
No.
You recognize legal?
No,
Okay.
House Bill 355 is public virtual school students, and House Bill 1003 is private virtual schools.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions of legal? Representative Slater?
And this may have been covered. I was out on another bill, presenting a bill in committee. I think the fourth item here has to do with the assessments. And to the sponsor, is there an amendment? Did I miss an amendment, or is that still part of the bill?
Are you asking this?
Oh,
of
I'm
the
sorry.
legal?
Yeah, this is for the sponsor. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any objection? Go back in session. We're now back to Chairman Haston. There was an amendment 4771.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it deleted the requirement that the school administer the test once a year.
Okay, so the first three items are still in the bill, but the fourth item is out. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, members, we are on House Bill 1003. Any further questions of Chairman Haston? If not, any objection to the question being called? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote? Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. House Bill 1003 moves out to full committee. Thank you, Chairman Haston. I'm going to give you the gavel back.
All right, we do have Chairman Farmer back here that we're going to try to get to, since he's been patiently waiting. Real quick, if you'll turn without objection to item number 22.
Second.
All right, Chairman Farmer, you are recognized.
All right,
on
thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee,
House Bill 1125.
I have two amendments on this, members. So if we could adopt both, they add to one another so that neither one rewrites. So the first one is amendment coded 4499.
All right, hold on. Let's see which one needs to go on first. Hold on one second. legal thinks that. All right, so the first one makes the bill and the second one rewrites it. So all right, I'm gonna go out of session, let legal explain this real quickly. Out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Katie Robertson, Legal Services. Both amendments rewrite the bill. So if the committee would like to adopt both of them, then on the second amendment that is adopted, we would need to do a verbal amendment to strike by deleting all language after the enacting clause and substituting, and instead change it to by adding the following as a new section immediately preceding the last section and renumbering the subsequent section.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Katie, won't you write that down and let Chairman White to be able to do that verbal amendment? Because I know he has a great memory, but I don't think that he's going to remember.
I can say it on the
Okay,
record and
we're going to
that's
have Katie say that on the record when we get to that point. So we're going to go back into session. All right, and let's first, I need to take up the 4-9. All right, 449, we have a motion to second. And we, without objection, we will vote to adopt amendment 4499. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. All right, we need a motion to second on amendment 5987. Properly motioned and without objection, we will, this is the verbal amendment right here. Sorry. All right, I'm going to go to, do I need to go out of session? For staying in session. All right, out of session for the verbal amendment, we go to legal.
the verbal amendment for 5987, we need to delete by deleting all language after the acting clause and substituting section 1. And the new language would be by deleting the last section and adding the following as new sections and renumbering the sections accordingly.
All right, we're going back into session. Chairman White, do you make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we add to the verbal amendment as just described by legal.
All right, members, without objection, with the verbal amendment, we are set to vote on amendment 5987. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on your bill as amended. You're ready for an explanation.
Thank you, members. So what these two amendments did, two things now. We're on one now as amended, I hope. So the first one, what the first amendment did, members would prohibit the student achievement growth data from being used to evaluate teachers or principals if the student was enrolled for the school in the school for 50% or less of the school year. So if that kid comes in 50% or less of the time, we can't use it against our schools or our principals or teachers. And then the second part of it was this actually comes from a constituent in my district that passed away. Currently, if a teacher passes and has substantial sick days or vacation days, and she had about 400 there, our school system wants to reimburse that estate for these days that this teacher had earned. There's no mechanism in law to do so. So all I'm saying is that each LEA may, we're not requiring anything, may reimburse these teachers, administrators, estates for any sort of sick time or vacation time they built up and not been able to use before they pass away.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions? President Akeem, quick question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Farmer, the first, I guess, amendment, would you give me that again so I can get my question right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr.
Farmer.
Chair. Thank you. If a student comes into a school and they've not been there, or if a student enrolls in a school where they've been out for some odd reason, maybe they're in another school or somewhere else or not been in school, and they come into that school year and they're there for less than 50% of the time and their test scores are bad, then it can't be used against the teacher or the principal of that school system.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's what I needed.
All right, members, any other questions? If not, we are set to vote on, what was the number again? House Bill 1125. Madam Clerk, please open up the board for voting. Members, please cast your vote. All right. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, with 7 ayes, you move on to full education. All right, we'll roll the rest of the calendar to tomorrow, 1:30 PM at House Hearing Room 4, and we stand adjourned.